President of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Borut Pahor, and the President of the Chamber of Commerce and Trade of Slovenia, Mr. Boštjan Gorjup. Dear President of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Borut Pahor, dear Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Marjan Šarec, dear Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the business representatives, welcome to the 3Cs Initiative Business Forum, and warmly welcome to Slovenia, the only country in the world with love in its name. As stands in Slovenia's logo, there's plenty of love for green, for creative, for smart. And during this 2 days event, we will be hearing why these are so important for all of us, since they connect with transport, digital, energy, and innovation. One of our key objectives at this Business Forum is to see what has been achieved after the first Business Forum in Bucharest last year, and to see where we want to go further. The goal is also to strengthen the cooperation within the initiative and secure its sustainability with involvement of the private sector. So the question is not why, but rather when and how. So my name is Dejan Vladic, and when I'm not talking about love and seas and the greenery, I'm dealing with economic diplomacy at the Slovenian MFA, and I will be leading you through this 2 days event. We have amazing high-level panelists and speakers here with us who will guide us through various questions and challenges and show us what we have achieved so far, what our dream is, what our drive is, and how we want to achieve it. So without any further ado, allow me now to call to the stage our first speaker to open the Business Forum, Mr. Boštjan Gorjup, the President of the Chamber of Commerce and Trade. Please join me at the stage.
Esteemed President and Prime Minister, High Representative of Government and Institutions, Presidents of Chamber of Commerce and Industry, fellow business people. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you on the second Business Forum of 3C Initiative here in Ljubljana. To welcome you also in the business event that just might be one of the biggest ever organized here in Slovenia, at least in the sense of national and activity diversity. 600 representatives from 43 countries. We are about to engage a series of vibrant panels, meetings and networking addressing common interests of the 3C Initiative business community. The goal is really to boost up economy and societies to a higher level of development. We want to increase the cooperation within the initiative member countries as well as within the EU and globally. Cohesion is the word of the day. Establishing common ground is a challenge, and innovation is a tool to achieve it. No one can deny our presence, but only our competence and our results will enable us to raise our voice. The voice of economy should respond to politicians' think tanks' recommendations and commitments which seldom come through at proclaimed standards. This is not criticism. It's just a reminder that the world will always be imperfect, but we should never stop fighting for making it a better place. The fourth 3C Initiative Summit and the second 3C Initiative Business Forum are addressing the same challenges as the previous one: energy, transport infrastructure, and digitalization were recognized as a crucial sector enabling our companies and economies to perform better and increase our society's welfare. In Ljubljana, we added innovation as a connective fabric that fuels them all. Panel discussions on energy will provide us with energy transition insights and dilemmas, the issues of over-dependence on a single energy source, and hopefully with low-carbon targets that we should set and achieve. But how we get energy and how we use it is dramatically linked to climate change. This is where innovation comes in. Transport discussions will deal with the infrastructure investment gap in our countries and how to overcome it by channeling investment to the most effective purposes. That's where innovative technologies must provide new energy-efficient transport solutions. The bottom line is, transport means connectivity. Connectivity means exchange. Exchange means growth, and growth means welfare. Digitalization is becoming embedded into all aspects of our lives and all areas of activity. There will be talks about 5G, artificial intelligence, and other innovative approaches. Cybersecurity is an increasingly complex issue. But while searching for all inclusive security solutions, let's not forget about the most important issue, humanity. To conclude with, let's be realistic. All the ideas and projects conceived and nursed within the 3C idea will remain unreal and unrealized as long as they don't get funding. Even more so, they never can be executed without bankers' approval. There is a huge project portfolio published on the 3Cs Initiative website, and it's being updated at every 3Cs Initiative Summit, every year, but it's still hanging there. Last year in Bucharest, the letter of intent in relation to the establishment of the 3Cs Investment Fund was signed. This year, the talks continue. The 3Cs Investment Fund could become an important additional funding platform for projects with tangible effect on region and European Union. I believe that we will have 2 inspiring days of high-level debates, and since you are in Slovenia, feel green. When the session ends, go for a walk and enjoy also Slovenian hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gorjup. And now allow me to call to the stage our next speaker for the opening speech, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Slovenia, Mr. Marjan Šarec.
Distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome to Slovenia such a respectable number of political leaders, business people, companies, institutions, and media. On this occasion, I'm honored to have the opportunity to open the second 3Cs Initiative Business Forum, which is focusing on 4 key areas: energy, infrastructure, digitalization and innovation, and involves the cross-cutting topics of transatlantic relations, security and water. 12 countries of the initiative are geostrategically well positioned between the Baltic, Black and Adriatic Sea. While covering 28% of the EU's territory and 22% of its population, our economies represent only 10% of the EU's GDP. Therefore, since its formation, the 3Cs initiative has had 3 main objectives: boosting economic development, strengthening the cohesion of the European Union, and enhancing the transatlantic ties. In my view, the key word relating to the initiative is connectivity. Only by improving of the connectivity, not only from north to south, but also from west to east, we are ensuring a better, more prosperous and more sustainable future for our next generations. Another important aspect is the cohesion. I strongly believe that greater digital, energy and transport interconnectivity in Central and Eastern Europe will benefit the European Union as a whole. All three are key to economic development in the region, boosting livelihoods, job opportunities and innovation. Excellencies, Slovenia continues to support a strong, future-oriented and development-led European Union. To ensure a common future in a safe, stable and successful family of EU nations, we have to build up our cooperation among leaders, institutions, businesses and civil society. Slovenia, as a green country, a land of forests, shapes its business environment towards encouraging creative, innovative, smart and sustainable advanced development. The long-term development perspective of the 3Cs initiative countries, and indeed all countries of the world, will mostly depend on their capability of innovative economy. A special thematic discussion of today's forum will thus be dedicated to the innovation-driven development. With its focus on connectivity and innovation-driven development, the initiative is creating a stable and prosperous 3Cs region. The 3Cs initiative is also an important element in the construction of a strong, resilient and connected European Union. In addition to that, it can create opportunities for enhanced transatlantic cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, I am especially pleased to see that the business part of the initiative has been developing well. The Business Forum, co-organized by the Government of the Republic of Slovenia, Slovenian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Center for European Perspective, has attracted more than 600 business representatives. Slovenian government has been advocating for an inclusive 3Cs initiative business forum, and today I'm happy to acknowledge the participation from more than 40 countries, including high representatives of governments, international organizations, development banks and chambers of commerce. With a determination to achieve clear deliverables, the forum will see 18 special presentations of strategic investment projects that can give additional positive dynamic to investment opportunities. In addition, I have to mention another tool of the forum, a progress report. Initiative list of priority interconnection projects was published this week. On the margins of the forum, numerous side events will take place, such as the meeting of the 3Cs initiative, Chambers of Commerce network, a high-level 3Cs initiative investment fund meeting, a discussion between the 3Cs initiative and EU macro-regional strategies, and a number of B2B meetings. Distinguished guests, I'm convinced that the Business Forum will increase the visibility of 3Cs initiative, open up new business and investment opportunities, establish new business contacts, and encourage further strengthening of economic cooperation. I wish you all effective networking and lots of success in your areas of work. Thank you very much.
I'm thankful to both distinguished speakers. The Business Forum is now officially opened, and allow me now to move straight to our first panels of the Business Forum. In this hall, we will now continue with a panel on energy, while at the same time, one floor up, we will have in the innovation room, we will have a panel on innovation. So the panel on innovation will be moderated by Mr. Ian Brzezinski from the Atlantic Council and will present innovation champions and discuss strategic perspectives. You are all kindly welcome to attend it. The debate on energy in this hall will be moderated by Mr. Janez Kopač, the Director of Energy Community in Slovenia. Just one important remark for the moderators. In the corner of the screen behind me, you will see a time ticking away for each panel, so please mind the time. Now I call Mr. Janez Kopač to join me on the stage and introduce his distinguished speakers and panelists. Please, Mr. Kopač, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Welcome, everybody. Not everybody, because some of you are leaving. But perhaps I shall wait for half a minute more. But here will be interesting. Please stay. Okay, I think organizers told me I have to be very strict with time. First, welcome to my beautiful Ljubljana, capital of Slovenia, which has some love in it, but otherwise it's a country with a little bit of sea and a little bit of population, which is very well positioned. Just look at Melania, for example. I would first like to greet all the excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends here, and to thank to organizers for inviting me. My name is, as you have heard, Janez Kopač. I'm otherwise from Slovenia. I was proudly serving this country for 18 years as member of the parliament and minister for different portfolios, but now I'm managing Energy Community, which is based in Vienna. Here is our map. It's a little bit of commercial. Energy Community is next to Council of Europe, the only pan-European international organization based on the rule of law. It means based on the treaty. And if I quote Secretary Perry's speech from Keravik this year, which is really, really good, I can say that I have the coolest job, which comes with a front row seat to some of the most astonishing examples of cutting-edge developments in the energy world that ever happened. Is it okay? Yes. For warming up this panel, I prepared only really very few slides, which I call Game of Maps. So this is Free Seas Initiative. Initiated in 2015, has priority infrastructure projects, not solid structure yet, but hopefully it will come. This is a map of projects of common interest. It's a European project of defining which infrastructure is of a supranational importance, and you see that our region, if I call it like that, Three Seas Initiative region, is mostly red. This means gas projects, gas interconnectors. The rest of Europe, more developed part of Europe, is full of blue. This is about electricity. And this is one of the things that makes our region similar. We have some similarities, and we can call ourselves an energy region, but this energy region, of course, needs a solid structure. This one is supported by EU with co-financing of infrastructure projects. And what are projects or infrastructure projects of common interest? Electricity, no doubt, oil infrastructure in the past a little bit, but the definition develops through the time. Smart grids were introduced later, CCS projects, and gas from the early beginning, but now also gas in definition is changing in EU. In the past it was only about natural gas and LNG. Now it is also about blue methane, synthetic gas, green methane and hydrogen. European Union right these days, together with Japan, is launching an initiative, still waiting on support from United States, about the hydrogen as a basis for decarbonized energy, because industrial processes at least need some heavy fuel oil, if I can call it so, and this hydrogen is. This region, our region, is also part of so-called 16+1 initiative. Okay, now it's 17+1 with Austria, which was launched by China in 2012. Also providing some financing, plus including 5 Western Balkan countries. And if I go further on with similarities, majority of our region has problems with too much coal or oil shale in electricity generation. A majority of our region has low or lower liquidity gas markets. Gas is now there. Our region has something in common as well, and this is situation in the past, and later I will tell you in the future. 16,000 years before Christ, this area, or these 3 seas initiative countries didn't have sea at all. Black Sea was Black Lake, the others didn't have access to the sea, including Croatia. Climate changes are happening, wish it or not. This was in the past. This is hopefully not future, how Earth would look like if all the ice melted. There would be too much of seas. Some countries from this initiative wouldn't exist anymore. There is a greeting from Port of Houston, if I can say so. And that's all for the introduction. Next slide is about summary, but summary needs your input. And I would like to inspire all today's speakers to talk about future challenges related to new definition of infrastructure in a decarbonized area. Allow me to invite today's host, Slovenian Deputy Prime Minister Alenka Bratušek, to share with us her 5D vision for a 5G world of the future. Alenka, my colleague in the past, was Prime Minister during worst economic crisis in Slovenia in modern history, and she saved us from Greek scenario, and we shall all be thankful to her, and I believe she has a lot to tell us about her vision. And of course the second, a very special guest whose inspiring speeches I often recycle and whom I like because he always says international cooperation first. I hope I will not make you any problems back in Washington, D.C. United States Secretary of Energy, Mr. Rick Perry. But today, Slovenia is the first. Alenka, please, the floor is yours.
Honorable colleagues, especially Secretary, Mr. Perry, dear Rick, Minister, dear Tomislav, dear guests. First of all, I would like to give you a warm and nice greeting in the most beautiful country in the world. I hope that after this interesting panel, you will have time to see some natural beauties of Slovenia and try our excellent food and wine. Only then will you find out why Slovenia is the only country in the world that carries the word love in its own name. I'm honored to welcome you to the energy panel of this year's 3Cs Business Forum, dedicated to the challenges and opportunities of the energy transitions. The title of this panel is very fundamental, and the elements arising from this have been in front of us, the decision makers, for quite some time now. I would like that we narrow our focus a bit today and taking into account the 3Cs priority projects, it is clear we need to focus on the energy infrastructure and its role in the future energy systems, or rather the contribution of modern energy infrastructure on the transition of the decarbonized energy system. EU is on its way to discuss and determine whether we will pursue the climate neutral goal by 2050. Climate change is a global challenge with profound implications for the future of humanity and our planet. The energy systems as the underlying system for society's well-being, and they must play their part in the decarbonization of our societies. There is no doubt about it. But I don't want you to debate today about the role of different energy sources in this respect. I want us to focus on what are the infrastructural needs that will enable us to use all possible low-carbon sources as well as energy-efficient solutions to achieve decarbonization, while at the same time securing the well-being of our citizens and the competitiveness of our economy. Slovenia has a very good record of doing that in the past. As I like to frequently point out, the World Energy Council has positioned Slovenia on the 6th place in the overall energy trilemma index. We even come second if you only look at the security of supply dimension. This is a result of excellent expert knowledge as well as good and courageous decision-making decades ago. But are we able to keep this ranking in the future? Are we able to take the necessary decisions today that will speed the process of decarbonization while at the same time keep the security of supply and competitiveness at balance? We all know that decision-making process as such is much more complex today than it was, for example, half a century ago. We also know that we are running out of time. Climate change is evident and is taking its toll also in our economies. I must also note that the world is a dynamic place and the world's trendsetters today might not be completely in line when it comes to Paris Agreement and decarbonization. This year is of particular importance in the sense of future planning. Across the European Union, the member states are heavily involved in the process of drafting and adopting national energy and climate plans that will determine goals, policies and measures on 5 dimensions of energy and climate policies: decarbonization, energy efficiency, internal market, security of supply, and of course, research, development and competitiveness for the next decade. Slovenia will place the adoption on its own national energy and climate plan in a broader strategic framework. Parallel to the national plan for 2030, we will be adopting 2 long-term strategies, one on emissions reductions by 2050 and one on energy sector development. The European Energy Union is a vital framework for integration the mid-term national energy and climate policies on a step-by-step basis. Energy mix, however, is still in the hands of the member states. Decisions such as the long-term use of nuclear or how the structure of energy sources will look like in a particular member state in 2050 is something that must also be determined in line with the Energy Union mechanisms, but on a national basis. And these decisions must be taken as soon as possible in order to adopt the whole process of transition to it. Which brings me directly to the needs and challenges of the energy infrastructure. It is the energy infrastructure that will need to help us deliver the goals of a climate-neutral society. One can opt for more renewables, for more or less nuclear, and we are all be looking into the future without coal and oil. In the long run, probably also without natural gas. But the fact is that our supply structures and energy systems will remain diverse due to a number of factors. It is the energy infrastructure, especially the one that crosses borders, that will need to be able to address this particular challenge of diversity in energy systems. On the other hand, diversity will be localized to a greater extent than we have been used to so far. So the energy infrastructure of the future we also need to adopt to this fact. It is clear already today that the energy infrastructure will need to meet the 5 megatrends: decarbonization, democratization, digitalization, decentralization, and deregulation. We have started with setting up an appropriate European regulatory framework to address these challenges in the field of electricity market. The new market design legislation is now adopted. The member states, including Slovenia, and in particular all market players, will need to find a way to implement it in the face of the 2030 decarbonization targets. The changes are big, and we have yet to see how they actually work in practice. In today's debate, I would particularly like to hear what can we, as decision makers, do for the market players to enhance this. At the same time, I would also like to hear what the companies involved in the new market design framework can offer in return. As I already mentioned, the EU will soon be deciding on whether or not to enhance the 2030 and 2050 targets. And with having this in mind, we need to be sure that we can really deliver. I'm happy that Slovenia has something to show in this sense. Our transmission system operator, ELES, has initiated a cross-border smart grid project that is today known as an investment of European significance and an EU flagship project in the field of smart grids deployment. I'm therefore happy that we will be able to hear about this project during this panel. Energy infrastructure will need a stable market and regulatory framework, and we, as decision makers, must provide for this. For a truly functioning market, we need clear rules and strong regulatory authorities. Energy infrastructure will also need huge investment capacity to address the 5 megatrends I was mentioning earlier. Making sure this need does not burden the end consumers beyond what is still feasible. We will need to provide new financing mechanisms and opportunities. What market players cannot deliver must be delivered through EU funding instruments. Last but not least, new technologies will also play a significant role for the transformation of the existing energy infrastructure. Let me now come to my concluding thoughts. Today, at the break of new social paradigm, one can find it is easy to offer visions of the future. And these visions can be likable, but they are not necessarily realistic or achievable. I will be bold and say that I believe climate-neutral society is a fact. Climate-neutral society is the new paradigm, and even if one might personally disagree with this, it is unstoppable. However, the vision we as decision makers offer as the way to the future must be realistic, taking into account our borderline abilities. Soon it will be 50 years from the Club of Rome report on limits to growth. That report was the first milestone where we have identified that our way of living puts an enormous strain on securing the survival of humanity and the environment as we know it. We have done a lot since then, but I will be the devil's advocate and tell you that we have only picked the low-hanging fruits so far. I'm sure that now it's time to climb the tree. Thank you for your attention, and don't forget that you are in the most beautiful country in the world, and this country, our beautiful Slovenia, is the only one that carries the word love in its own name. You should find out why.
Thanks, Alenka. I said everything introductory what I wanted. Secretary Perry, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Alenka, thank you. You remind me that my home state is the headquarters for an airline called Southwest Airlines, and their logo is a heart, and they fly into Love Field. So, and their logo is you're free to move around the country. So I'm just trying to figure out, there's got to be a connection between Slovenia and Southwest Airlines in some way or another. So we'll work that out in another bilat. But it's a great honor to be here, flying in my first trip into Slovenia. I had the very clear recognition about what a beautiful country this is. Flying in over the Julian Alps and into the airport. Just what an incredibly gorgeous, green and mountainous, and that was before I ever got into the wine. And so then I have been educated a touch on the great wine industry that you have here in your country as well, Alenka. So, as many of you know, I addressed in last September the Three Seas Initiative summit that we had in Romania, and I'm delighted to be here again today to speak before you to represent President Trump and the American people. Tonight, I'm going to be traveling to France to celebrate, to memorialize 75 years since a most important day in world history and certainly in Europe's history, and that is the memorial of D-Day at Normandy. And by any measure, Normandy remains this very solemn, this sacred place. It's a silent reminder that freedom is not free, but it's bought. It's bought by those who face the fire and the fury of tyranny until it's defeated. And there's no better way to honor the heroism, the sacrifice of those who pay that ultimate price than by reaffirming the right of people and nations to chart their own course and choose their own destiny. Between the Baltic and the Adriatic and the Black Seas, today's conference of free and sovereign nations stands resolutely at this pivotal place. And speaking for the President and the United States and the American people, we stand with you. We stand with you as you chart your own energy future. We stand with you by our willingness to share with you our energy bounty, our knowledge, our expertise, our innovation. And we will continue to stand with you so that we can grow and prosper and build a better future together on both sides of the Atlantic. To further that aim, I announced a new initiative, the Partnership for Transatlantic Energy Cooperation, at last September's summit. And this March, as you mentioned, at CERAWeek in my home state of Texas, PTEC met for the very first time. And the premise of PTEC is this: by strengthening their energy security, countries across the continent can advance their economic security, bolster their national security, and it's one way of strengthening their energy security, and that is by increasing their energy diversity. Speaking From my own country, we're ready, we're willing, and we're able to help other nations increase that diversity by expanding their energy choices. As I've noticed, as I've noted many times, through a cascade of innovation, the United States is producing energy more abundantly, more affordably, more sustainably, more cleanly and efficiently, and from a wider range of sources than anyone ever thought possible. As a result, we now export our LNG to 35 countries on 5 continents, including Europe, and we are about to become a net energy exporter as well. We offer unprecedented energy choices for the world, especially for our trading partners and our friends. For such countries, choice means this: if they were restricted to just one source for their energy needs, they're restricted no more. And so we offer not just our LNG, but our civil nuclear technologies. It means that that you're not bound to just one nation for those needs. You're bound no more by that. And so we offer ourselves as a competitive alternative to the Russian Federation. It means that if they were compelled to depend on just one energy route for those needs, they are compelled no more. And so we support multiple routes to deliver energy across Europe. Along with energy choice, we support free and open markets, the rule of law, the sanctity of contracts. We uphold the transparency of energy deals. We oppose using energy to coerce any country, and we remain rock solid, reliable suppliers of every fuel that we provide. For these reasons, we believe that obtaining energy resources and technology from the United States is a highly attractive choice for any nation, certainly for our friends here in Europe. And for that same reason, we oppose the construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline as well as the Turkish Stream counterpart. It would supply a single source of supply from a single country providing that supply, using a single route to deliver that supply deep into the heart of Europe. And yet, despite the threat that this project represents, I believe there is strong cause for optimism on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm delighted to see a number of European nations taking tangible steps towards increasing their energy diversity. I'm encouraged by Germany's decision last year to reduce its dependence on a single supplier by agreeing to purchase LNG, including LNG from the United States, and by its announcement this March that it would move forward with the financing of 2 import terminals. I applaud the step by Lithuania to build a floating storage and regasification unit. It's good to see Poland expanding its LNG terminal, reducing its natural gas imports from Russia, increasing its LNG exports from other nations, including the United States. Other European nations are also expanding their existing terminals, and they're building new ones as well. And let me add that the United States is exporting its LNG to nearly every country in Europe which has such a terminal. And that we now have 4 export projects in operation in our own country, with 3 more that are soon to come online, 2 that are set, I think, later this year, and 1 that will be finished by 2025. I'm encouraged by the Southern Gas Corridor, which will help southern Central Europe diversify its gas supply with 10 billion cubic meters per year of gas from Azerbaijan and the Caspian region as well. So I believe it's absolutely essential that Europe prioritize these kinds of energy projects that strengthen the ties that bind our countries together rather than drive wedges between us. I believe it's equally essential that Europe stand as a champion of market practices, of transparency, continuity, in order to attract the investment needed to accelerate its own energy development. And through that development, energy security across the continent. As for the United States, I couldn't be more excited by how our own energy trade with Europe will not only provide economic and national security benefits to all involved, but will contribute to the collective strength, security, and resilience of our NATO alliance. 75 years ago, my father was a crew member in a B-17, flying 35 missions in the cause to help deliver freedom back to the European continent. I can't help but think today that he would be very proud that his son is working again with those European partners to help deliver freedom again powerfully to the European continent. That is what is at stake here. Today, let us honor those who 75 years ago made extraordinary sacrifices for freedom. That today we are continuing to secure the freedom of Europe in the energy arena. Let us strengthen the security and the sovereignty of free nations. Let's push open the doors to opportunity for all. And let us begin writing a brand new chapter in freedom and opportunity through our energy cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Secretary of Energy, Mr. Perry. This was really inspiring, I told you. Now I would like to invite other panelists to join me here. Organizers said that they will project who is coming, but anyhow, everybody knows who is in this panel, so just please come. We will sit on these seats. There is one more. Don't think that somebody didn't come. It's because the next panel has one speaker more. And now I will move on my place. Hello, hi, welcome. Okay. Hello, hi. Nice to see you. Zdravo. Dear panelists, we will follow the ranks, and the first one is Minister. Minister Ćorić, coming from Croatia. Croatia, our neighbor, in everything good and bad, co-owner of nuclear power plants, always importer of electricity for years and years, now has a very, very ambitious strategy, planning to become exporter of renewables electricity to its neighbors, including Slovenia. And this is a big development step, and of course I congratulate you for this. And I have to say, Croatia was very smart. They merged Ministry for Environment and Energy and solved all the problems of integrated energy and climate plans.
I was such type of minister once as well, but at those times we didn't have such integrated plans yet. So I would, and I believe everybody here, be very interested to hear your experience in developing the idea not only about LNG Kirk, which I'm sure you will mention, but it was interesting to hear a few days ago that only the future will show if this was the right decision, if you were quoted correctly. And a sub-question would be, now when Europe is trying to turn towards hydrogen, do you think that if the decision would be adopted 3 years from now, LNG Kirk would be, LNG terminal would be LNG plus hydrogen terminal? This is only science fiction. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we hear each other? Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the organization of this panel and whole event, and thank you for inviting us here. I'd like to go to your words in one moment. If the decision for the LNG Kirk was made 3 years ago, probably it will be a combination of different things. But just to say a word about this quotation in the media, that wasn't a sentence. The future will show if it was a good decision. It was the sentence, the future will for sure show that it is a good decision. But let me go to the strategy and the future energy future of the Republic of Croatia. Yes, you mentioned the strategy, the energy strategy of the Republic of Croatia is in a public debate, and Croatia is a small country, small open economy, which has some competitive advantages, is fully oriented to go into that direction of low carbonized or decarbonization of our economy, especially in the energy sector, and we can achieve that by orientation to the production coming from the renewables. That is the reason that in our strategy we are fully devoted to the production coming from the solar energy, coming from the wind energy, and the production coming from the hydro. And that is the idea which is in platform of the energy strategy of the Republic of Croatia. But of course, the production is only one side of the story when speaking about the 3 Cs initiative and the initiatives coming from this platform. We are fully orientated to the diversification, of course, as a very important tool of achieving the energy independence of the European continent, and especially the 3 Cs initiative countries. Having that in mind, the Croatia did all we could in the period of the 2 last years in order to come to the situation in which we are right now, and that is the situation in which we can say that the building of the LNG terminal on the island Kirk is in progress. We expect this terminal to be finished until the end of 2020. So in January 2021, the first gas will go from this terminal to the north, we expect. Of course, the capacity of the terminal is 2.6 BCM, and we expect that the countries around Croatia, especially the countries on the north, are going to be interested in booking the capacity in the next period of time. Except this project, when speaking about the diversification, and let me refer to the words of Mr. Perry, the diversification of the supply as one of the most important, let's say, agendas of the EU. We are very much interested in realization of the EA project, Ionic Adriatic Pipeline, and its connection to the TAP-TANAP pipeline in the point of Fier in Albania. That is a project Croatia would like to put on the PCI list in the next period of time, and we expect support of all our neighbors to that.
Thank you. Next guest, I apologize, I made a mistake because he's even higher, Mr. Piotr Naimski. Okay, Secretary of State in the government, in the Prime Minister's office in Poland. You have your own messages anyhow, but allow me to ask you one initial question. Idea of energy union was somehow born in Poland, and it came out of the security of supply question. So this was, let's say, the initial driving idea for energy union some 5-6 years ago. Now, energy union, it was accepted in Europe as an idea, but now it has 5 pillars, not only one. Are you happy with such an extension of original idea? And how do you plan to adapt your future energy strategy to all 5 pillars? If you can tell us this, of course, in short words, but otherwise, please.
Thank you very much. No, this is really a very good question. Thank you for inviting me here. Actually, you know, the idea of cooperation on the field of security of supplies, energy supplies, started in Poland even not 7 years ago, but probably, you know, 25 years ago, or something like that, because we are almost totally dependent on one monopolistic company which provide us with gas. We are on the way, you know, to change it. And returning to the main theme of our panel, I would like to say that transformation is not for the transformation itself. Transformation is for something. And transformation of the energy is should provide us with more security, more diversity, more reliability, you know, of our networks, more technologies for generation, and last but not least, you know, it is in a sense combined with climate changes, and the positions of the targets I mentioned is in relation with your question. And if we are talking about security of supply, the major issue for us now, you know, in our strategy is to solve this from the side of gas supplies to Poland. And just to say it briefly, we are on a good way to have it achieved by 2022. We are building a pipeline connecting Poland with Norwegian shelf. We do have operational LNG terminal on Baltic Sea, which is being expanded by 50%, and it will be ready by 21. And we are going to have a floating terminal regasification unit in Gdańsk by 2024-25. And this will give us 100% opportunity to have supplies from different sources, different producers, by different routes, and will have enough infrastructure environment to start a competitive gas market in Poland. The question of energy transition in Poland is complicated, of course, because if you've seen, you know, on your first map, probably, or second map, 80% of energy in Poland is based on coal, whether hard coal or lignite. 25 years ago, we used to have almost 100% of our energy based on coal. So we are going down with the coal in the mix. But anyway, we are going to stay on coal for next decades because we do have our own energy source, which is coal. And for security reasons and also for economic reasons, we are not going to abandon it. If we are going to keep coal, we have to have in mind emission standards. It's better to say than climate. I'm not a climatologist, but emission standards in European Union. So we need non-emission generation. The consumption of energy is going up in Poland. It's growing up steadily, but surely. The consumption per capita in Poland of energy is still much, much lower than average in European Union. So we'll have those non-emission generation. Non-emission generation means that we'll rely on offshore wind. Offshore wind is much more efficient and reliable than onshore wind. So we are planning offshore wind several investments. If we want to have offshore wind, which is the wind, we need gas generation to balance it. And this is why the consumption of gas will grow with next 2 decades for sure in Poland. This is why we are expanding this infrastructure, gas infrastructure I mentioned, and this is why we are looking for another non-emission reliable source, which is nuclear. And in Poland, we are going to start 20 years nuclear program, and we'll have by 2040 not less than 6 gigawatts in nuclear. Why? Because this is reliable, this is safe these days, and this is base load energy source. So combining renewables balanced with gas generation and nuclear will have the average emission still having probably half of our generation on coal below European standards. This is our strategy, and this is what we are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Poland is not always in the mainstream of EU energy policy, but it is very consistent. This we, I think, all have to admit. And now I would like to pass the floor to our guest from Germany, Mr. Berger, Miguel Berger, coming from Ministry for Foreign Affairs, Director General. A person who somehow runs the ministry, because ministers are always around. And I would be happy if you would tell us about your experience in energy transition. Energiewende is anyhow now a global expression. And explain how Germany found, because in energy world we always say Germany always finds good national solutions for European problems. How did you do it?
Janusz, thank you very much. Let me, first of all, start by thanking our Slovenian hosts for inviting me at very short notice to that panel. And let me also say that from our point of view, Germany is really an integral and natural part of this 3Cs initiative. If you look at the economic relations, I think with all 12 member states, Germany is a key partner. Not many people know, for example, that Germany's trade volume with the Visegrad states is more than with the US, more than with China, more than with France. So the dynamics in the economic relations in the last years have been really fantastic. And my minister promised in Bucharest that German companies would participate at the business forum. So we have a number of German companies here today, and which are obviously also very interested to learn on the different panels. Many things about, the main issue here is interconnectivity. Additional ideas, but also the question I get very often is financing of the projects, because many of the projects, if I look at energy, I think 14 projects overall, more or less all of them are well known because they are projects of common interest within the European Union. So the question our business community puts forward is the 3Cs Initiative Fund. Will that be really an additional financing for this project? What can we expect from the US there? Will there be a US financing in order to help boost this project? And let me also mention, because 17+1 was also mentioned here, the Chinese influence, which we personally, we Germany, see with a lot of skepticism. If you look at the EU budget starting in 2020, for the next 7 years, we have earmarked 40 billion euros for connectivity. That is an enormous amount of money, and a lot of that will go into the area of energy. You have asked about LNG, and Secretary Perry was right. We had a big event with the US on LNG, and we want to support, we will have, I think, 2 LNG terminals in Germany. We think the demand is there. And we always say to our US colleagues, LNG is welcome in Europe, it is welcome in Germany. Mr. Naimski has mentioned the positive impact it has had in Poland. We have had the same in the Baltics, where it has helped to drive prices down, to reduce dependency. But we also say to the US, LNG has to be market-driven. What we don't want, and let me say that also very clearly, is that LNG is helped by US sanctions. We totally reject sanctions against the energy relationship with Russia. Nord Stream 2 was mentioned, again with false information that it is a single connection. It is not a single connection, it's an additional connection. There is a serious and real demand for additional gas. So I think we really have to stick here to the facts. But let me say, LNG is welcome. Sanctions are rejected. We want to develop our energy relations with Russia the way we think it is necessary, and it is good for Germany. And Russia is not the only source of supply. That is false. Russia is below 40% of Germany's gas supply. We have Norway, we have the Netherlands, but the Netherlands will reduce. Germany's own production will reduce. So there is a definite need for more diversification. And if you look what has been achieved in the European Union in the last years on the resilience of our energy infrastructure, on building connectors, all of that has been achieved with the help of the European Union. So what we want, and that is why it is also so important to have the Commission participating at the 3Cs initiative, is that our European focus is maintained, that we decide on diversification projects, that we engage on them. Let me only say that Germany has given 1.5 billion euros on the Southern Gas Corridor. We get zero gas out of that, but we have supported it with 1.5 billion because we think it will help to strengthen the gas diversification in Europe. If you like, at a later stage, I can also talk a little bit about decarbonization and what we are planning in Germany, but maybe that as an introductory statement.
Thanks a lot. This is a business forum. Oh, yeah, okay. This is a business forum, and particularity of this business forum is to mix a little bit of politics and a little bit of business. And we have today representatives of 3 business entities here. First, I would like to invite for a speech Mr. Noushak, who is director of director of Gen Energia. Gen Energia, it's a Slovenian, a huge Slovenian energy company. We have a long history because I was in Slovenian energy sector as well, and he's there from ever. I have to say for the introduction that once when some other minister took a decision to split Slovenian electricity incumbent, which was called Holding Slovenske Elektrarne, into 2 pieces, one remaining Holding Slovenske Elektrarne and the other one Gen Energia, I was very much against, because I thought that this is losing the clout of energy sector. But the destiny showed different picture. This one is blossoming, the other one not so much. Gen Energia is a very, very advanced company based on nuclear power plants. I believe he will not be able not to mention it, but also transforming its activities into renewables. And I would be happy to hear your experience of transforming such a big business entity, which is like a tanker, into new waves or new paths which are in front of us as a challenge of Energiewende. Mr. Noushak, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Noushak has a presentation.
Thank you very much, Janes, for such a nice presentation, and we had a long history of positive cooperation. Thank you very much for also that I can speak here. I will touch basically 3 major pillars what our people are doing in our energy sector. First of all, is security supply. Secondly, is about economy, and thirdly, about environment. Energy consumption in Slovenia is very typical, let's say, mix of different sources. Primary energy, so the oil is presenting majority. We import 100% of the oil, 80% is coal, about 12% is nuclear. I'm talking about half of the nuclear. And about hydro, about 90%. What is important? We import about 4% of our electricity also, which is about 20% of our use. That's why security issue of supplying all these, let's say, energy sources is very important. Through years, we developed cooperation in the whole Europe, basically. To import electricity for 20% of our needs, we need to have wider infrastructure in all this region, basically taking into account all of the countries. We will go to Poland also in the next years. But why? First of all, to bring value to our company, to our domestic industry and users, but also to bring value in the region. It's a regional project of developing trading and selling of electricity and gas. By this, we bring the value also to the country national, let's say, players in the region. Nuclear power. Nuclear power plant Krško is a regional project. It started almost 50 years ago. 50 years ago, together with Croatia, and presenting a very important source of energy for Slovenia and Croatia, having in mind low carbon production. And I should say, we have a very good relation with the friends from Croatia. Although sometimes media and politicians are saying differently, but in reality, we successfully operate this plant with a high quality of safety, but also about the price of electricity in the region, and we believe we will run it for at least 30 years more. Why stability is also one of the factors. The second factor is economy. We did, together with partners, study how to proceed in the long term to supply energy, electrical energy in the region. And we take into account different data from different studies and come out with one of the factors, which is the levelized cost of electricity as an important, let's say, economical rule in the future investments. And we take into account recent investment, but also our intention in the area of life extension of existing nuclear power plant, but also in investing in hydro, because we are very active in the investing in hydropower plants, and also investing in the photovoltaic. But it comes out that the long term, the important factor is not only what kind of technology we have, but also what is the price of capital. Chinese capital is almost for free. The European capital, or if you go to the Great Britain, the capital is very expensive. That's why the long-term price of electricity depends as much as on the main technology, also on the cost of capital. Environment, certainly we need to decarbonize electrical production in the region, and we need to use the effective methods, economically effective, environmentally effective, to use those production of electricity which basically is bringing the less CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour or per megawatt hour. You can see here the black coal, the natural gas, solar, and our group, we are investing basically on the right side of these technologies, having in mind also second unit in Krško. We believe this could develop regional cooperation. We believe this could be a good future common project, regional project, to basically support our economic growth, but also support our standard in the region. That's why we believe we need to create, together with the politicians, level playing field, basically to have in the same basis all of the possible solutions to effectively go towards low carbon society in the future, certainly taking into account all financial resources of existing companies inside the existing price of electricity, but also taking into account other possibility of additional financing, also low CO2 production capabilities. But also in the nuclear especially, we need to bring awareness and public acceptance, and this is our certainly very important goal in the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Martin. And about one graph we will quarrel, but later, afterwards. Otherwise, we have to say that GEN Energia, or GEN Group, is a very, very future-oriented company. And we have to say about the nuclear power plant, the intergovernmental agreement between Croatia and Slovenia, which I signed, is the only globally which was ever signed about the building a nuclear power plant. It's very complicated, and it's a proof of possible cooperation in the region. Now I would like to pass the floor to representative of HEP, Hrvatska Elektroprivreda, Mr. Robert Krklec. His boss is over there, and this is why I first invited Mr. Novšak. But Croatia didn't split this huge electricity incumbent into two pieces like Slovenia did. And HEP was long, I would say, a behemoth which couldn't really restructure. But in last years, I would say, it's a very bright case of restructuring a company which was living in the past with very, very ambitious plans of new investment. Mr. Krklec, we would be, I believe, all very interested to hear this experience, how to transform such a big company into, to follow all these modern challenges about which we are talking today, and about 5 mega trends.
Thank you very much, first for inviting and for the opportunity to say a few things from the perspective of Croatian, of Hrvatska Elektroprivreda, of HEP. my distinguished previous speakers, I was listening carefully, and I will get to the end to the answer. But first, I want to withdraw a few things or a few words how I or HEP see the transformation into the energy company of tomorrow, because we want to think that HEP is transforming into energy company of tomorrow. First was this decarbonization, digitalization, decentralization, diversification, so much of these. I would add electrification, because we didn't mention, but this is also a very important thing. HEP is thinking also about investing in electrical network chargers for electric vehicles. I think that in the future, in the next 10 years, Europe will be flooded with electrical vehicles. Next thing is energy efficiency. We talked about that. Regulatory framework. Ms. Bratušek mentioned that before. I think that is a very important thing. Without that, we will not have the opportunity to go further. I want to emphasize also the role of one word on one active player that we didn't mention. This is the consumers or buyers. I didn't see that anyone says, but why we are doing that? We are doing that for our consumers, not for business. Business is also, business is normally important, but we have to have in mind that we are working that for the consumers, and they will have active role in the future. Through the roofs, through the solar panels, solar plants on roofs, electrical vehicles. We did not mention, for example, DSR, demand-side response. We have buyers in Croatia, big buyers, big companies that want to also sell the auxiliary services to HEP and to the network for the regulation of electricity system. And what is the common thing of all of that? Without this thing, we can't go further. This is investment, because you are talking about investment, and I will tell now where is Croatian HEP, where is HEP, is investment in grid. Investment in electrical network and the importance of grid operators, so TSO and DSO. When you ask how did we transform our company, or transforming, because this is the process in motion, HEP want to heavily invest in renewable sources in the future. So now we have a few lines that we are going now. We want to heavily invest in our treasure, in our hydropower plants, in next year to increase the capacity or the power of the hydropower plants. We want to build some new hydropower plants. Also, we are working now on the developing some projects of photovoltaics, also the wind power plants. So I don't want to talk too much, but this is the direction where Elektroprivreda is going, and we want to increase our renewable sources to 50% in next few years. On the side of the network I was talking about, before few years we extract the TSO, the transmission system operator, from vertical integrated HEP through the ITO mechanism, and also we extract the DSO, the district system operation. It is independent now. We also extract the public supply from the distribution system network, because distribution system operator, I think they, or in Croatian case only one, will become the catalysts of changes to this new energy system, make a trend. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and with this we came to the last speaker among panelists. Eles, here is Deputy Prime Minister Alenka Bratušek is here again. She already mentioned everything, but I have to say the face of Eles, transmission system operator, which is internationally very active and very well respected, is Uroš Salubir. He is today with us, and tell us, please briefly explain the Syncrogrid, a very innovative project done between Croatian and Slovenian transmission system operators, which is, as Ms. Bratušek said, a European flagship for the future adaptation of the infrastructure following the challenges of 5 megatrends. Please.
Thank you. Yanis, thank you for the invitation. Deputy Prime Minister and ladies and gentlemen. So actually Eles is running more than Syncrogrid. I was also tell a story about the Future Flow project today, but I'm really pleased to tell also something about the Syncrogrid, because when I talk to the people at the European Commission, we very commonly come to the conclusion that when we talk about smart grids, when we think about these new technologies, we have great ideas, but when you want to go into practical terms, into real investments, then you have a nightmare to solve. Yeah? So Syncrogrid is one of the lighthouse projects just because we managed to bring the very tough infrastructure in line with the demands of the smart technologies. Actually, what we are doing in the Syncrogrid is we are bringing the most valuable renewables from the region of 3 seas into the most valuable markets on the west, which will be actually a challenge. You can build renewables on parts of the grids where nobody will value them. And Syncrogrid, which we really do with great respect with our colleagues from Croatia, I think this is the second most important bilateral agreement which we have on the energy sector, just behind the nuclear power plant. So we are very successful at this. Maybe just to say a few words now about the Future Flow project, because it's also very important for this particular region. We're doing this project with Hungary, with Romania, with I prepared some presentation, but I would rather speak directly. No need to that. Yeah. So we do it also with Austria. So 4 countries in this region decided to check for the third option. For the third option of flexibility. Because when we talk about coal slowly vanishing, the perspective. So if we look to the 2050 targets, of course, it's very challenging. Going down 80 to 95% from the 1990 emissions will be a huge challenge for everyone. But when coal is slowly vanishing from the floor, from the table, we will have a huge problem of flexibility. Not only the energy might be largely replaced by renewables and other sources, but actually the flexibility will be the great challenge, and we will try to solve it. We will try to solve it by central storage, which is one important element. And the second element, maybe more traditional, will be natural gas. We talked a lot about that today. But I really want to highlight the third option, which is important. It was highlighted by Mr. Kirklets. It's the dispersed action of consumers. It's actually, sometimes it's called demand response, but it's also important to mention the distributed generation. But all these sources are very complex. They have to be linked into centralized platforms. And these platforms are something completely new. This is science. This is not something what you can invest. This is not something what you can take off the shelf. And we actually came with the Future Flow to very important conclusions about that. The first conclusion is that the third option actually exists. It can largely suppress the need of centralized storage, so we don't need so many chemical batteries to implement to solve the situation of the 2050. We can also diminish the need of natural gas as a flexibility source if we implement more of these platforms. But the second conclusion I think is very important, is that these platforms can only work if we link them very well across the member states' borders. So if we build such platforms just on a national level, of the member state level, this will never work for real. If we imagine these small consumers being active, working for the power system without the cross-border capability, that is not going to work. That's also one of the conclusions of the future. The third conclusion is centralization. If we go for a centralized solution, we will have a lot of problems because we will not be able to grasp the market liquidity. We will not be able to capture all the freedom which is within these active consumers. So we should go for decentralized solutions which are very demanding. Decentralized solutions mean that we have to invest in different fields, and we have to build this so-called ecosystem of demand response. The last conclusion, where I will finish my introductory speech, is that all these platforms are not so investment demanding, but the scalability in its essence will be very demanding in terms of science scalability. We can do the demo project, we can do single project, but to really work with smart grids on a large scale and to deploy this science into everyday lives of our citizens, and if you think back of the 2050 targets, which are very demanding, I can only say that we can manage all these challenges by having a very good collaboration between political and the technical level, and we have to define a very clear missions to do this. We need a mission like in 10 years we want to reach certain target with certain technology. Without these missions, I believe that this scalability of the science will be just too demanding, and we will face either a dead block near to 2050, or we will not reach these targets. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a challenge for European policy, and clean energy package, which was once called fourth energy package, was just adopted, and now we already have a next package, which I don't know how it will be called, but it's about adaptation of the gas legal framework, because European Union is trying to open the space through so-called sector coupling. So there will be in the future no clear border between electricity and gas sector, because one will enter another one with perhaps electrolysis. There will be hydrogen which will run then some electricity boilers and so on and so on. And this is a huge legal challenge for European Union. But before going into this and asking panelists if they're dealing with this dilemma already, I would like to offer an opportunity to audience to ask our distinguished panelists whatever related to energy, of course, and infrastructure, and use this opportunity to have them here. Is there any interest in the... Please, can organizers help me with the microphone? Or perhaps I will help you by myself.
Thank you, Janec. That was a great panel. I mean, I'm Sergio Gariba from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy. I'll say I enjoyed the discussion. I have one question, which is maybe difficult, which is the value added for our energy systems in the 3 Cs initiative. I was listening to you. I found quite a few mentioning what I would calling all these I mean, the digitalization, the decentralization, the diversification, was Perry saying that, deregulation, I mean, was the minister who said that, and I would add the democracy as well. I mean, the people should be able to make their own choices. But the value added of the 3 Cs initiative, I mean, for our countries, how do you see that? Thank you.
Is this a question to me or to panelists? I believe it is to panelists. Who would like to answer? Perhaps Mr. Naimski, or
let me start with reminding that energy security, security of supplies, it relies on our national governments, and this is obvious. This is practicality, and on the other side of this story, we need cooperation. We need such a project as described a few minutes ago. We need energy market designed, but still there is no European body responsible for European energy security, formally and in practice. Second, trying to answer your question, there are separate sectors of energy. Some of them are easier for cooperation and some of them not. If we are talking about the gas sector, we are on a good way, to have such a added value to 3 Cs initiative. We've seen this on the map, this network of interconnection between Baltic, Black Sea and Adriatic Sea is really numerous. We need some extra linkages, and we'll have a real infrastructure network which would serve to create probably, really gas market for the region. We are building in Poland, for example, interconnector with Slovakia. And this interconnector with Slovakia will allow us to send gas from the LNG terminal on Baltic through Poland, Slovakia to Hungary, because already exists interconnector between Hungary and Slovakia, not being used actually, and then to the center of Balkans, and vice versa. If we'll have producers on the Black Sea in Romania, we may have this gas being sent to the center of the region. So this is for sure added value if we can cooperate and harmonize those investments. If you are talking about technologies, once again, we can share experiences with new innovative technologies, and this is possible. I mean, this is possible today. Probably the most demanding sector is energy sector, because we do have interconnector, we do have intra-system connections in the region. But for example, having such linkages between Polish and German systems, still we are finding loop flows, and we are not able to solve. I mean, it's better today than it was 3 years ago, but anyway, still it creates problems. And in many other places, I mean border places in the region, the problem exists. So, the answer is complicated, but we should work on that. and we should share experiences. And our meeting today is a good opportunity to share our strategies, to let us know, the projects we have on a national level, and probably, combine them. If it could be, my last intervention. So one remark, about projects which could be in the interest of one European country and not necessarily for the neighbor or neighbors. I am talking about second Nord Stream. Second Nord Stream is good for Germany, is good for Russia. Actually, second Nord Stream 55 BCM of gas will be sent not to Germany, but through Germany down to the southern Europe and Balkans. And this will saturate the region with the gas coming once again from one supplier. This is against the market, this is against solidarity, and you see, this is why we in Poland, we have completely different strategy.
Thanks. I think Mr. Naimski summarized this very well. If I can just add something on top of that, this initiative, I believe, comes out of gas initiative, which was very relevant some years ago. It is still, but still perhaps a little bit less nowadays. And it came out of two languages which we are speaking in Europe. One is language of liquid gas markets, and one is language of countries with low liquidity, which I tried to show on a map. And countries with high liquidity have completely different concerns and problems than countries with low liquidity, where, of course, sometimes it happens. I use this joke quite often. Russian gas is always more expensive in the closest countries. More it goes towards west, cheaper it is. If it would go to New York, it would be for free. Gas was something what inspired the Free Seas initiative, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk about energy interconnections and infrastructure in general, because we have many challenges with decarbonization and 5 mega trends, and we have a lot in common. I didn't show one map, which now I'm sorry I didn't, because I was afraid it would be too long. It's a map of GDP per capita in Europe, and exactly these countries, Free Seas Initiative countries plus Greece, are on these maps of European Commission, all red, except Western Slovenia, and all the rest, except part of Wales, has lighter colors. But this is something what brings us together and satisfies also a need to talk with a common language. It was too much about this. Sergio, did you get an answer? Probably yes, probably not. Thanks. Perhaps another question. We don't have much time more, but one question I think we could afford. Yes?
Hi, Dan Fried, no longer with the U.S. administration, so I can be a little more frank. My answer to your question about the added value of 3 Cs is that it brings together the United States, the countries of this region, Germany, and the European Commission in a way that might not be possible, including for my own government, if it weren't for this forum. All right, so that is considerable value added. The purpose then in the energy portion is to do what Piotr Naimski was talking about, which is help support alternatives to reduce Russian gas leverage over Europe. If I can be blunt, that's not the only purpose, but that is one of the purposes, and much progress has been made thanks to the European Union. And as for Miguel Berger, we have different views about Nord Stream. I get that. But as we're approaching the issue, as you said, let's remember certain facts. It is not true that sanctions are off limits with respect to Europe's energy relationship with Russia. We've already crossed that line. The United States and Europe together imposed sanctions on Russian energy production. I know because I was the US negotiator and we talked about it. So you know as well as I do. We've crossed that line. Now, having said that, I'm not a believer in sanctions targeting Nord Stream 2. But we have crossed the line of sanctions on Russian energy after their invasion of Ukraine. And what I would love to see is a way to, we're not going to come to a common position, Miguel, on Nord Stream 2, but I would love to see Germany coming all in the Three Seas Initiative to work on common projects such as those that Piotr Naimski was mentioning, in cooperation with the European Commission, and then we can agree, best case we agree to disagree on Nord Stream 2. I will continue to hate it, you will continue to defend it, but we will both work, the United States, Germany, the European Commission, Poland can work to mitigate its strategic downsides, and whatever they are. So that's my answer to your question, and I put it bluntly and brutally because I can do so, not being in the U.S. government after 40 years.
Thanks. You mentioned or listed everybody except energy community. I think you forgot it. But now I would. If somebody would really like to reply, give a microphone, of course, to distinguished panelists, but otherwise we are 2.5 minutes beyond the allowed time, and here, I think in this room, big bosses or presidents will have next session, and the interest of audience will increase again. Thanks to my colleagues and distinguished panelists. I think it was interesting. We all learned many things, and we continue like something or not, but I think we understand each other now better. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kopač, for a great panel, and big thanks to the distinguished panelists and speakers. It's always important for the flow of the forum to jump straight into the main topic, such as energy, to warm up. So our next panel is going to be a presidential panel, and it will start at 3:30 sharp. So I will ask you all to be back at your seats punctually. And after the presidential panel starts, the protocol reminded me you might not be able to enter the hall anymore. So one more remark for the audience. The next panel, the presidential one, the President of Poland will speak in Polish. So you are all kindly invited to pick up the headphones at the back of the hall for the English translation. So you are free now for a short break, and I'll see you back at 3:30. Thank you very much.